The question came from a young diplomat who had never seen Earth. Why do humans spend more money on rescue ships than warships? The Galactic Council chamber fell silent. 40 species sat in their floating chairs, and none of them had a good answer. They had debated human nature for centuries. They had studied human wars, human art, human science. But this simple question about rescue fleets had never occurred to them. An old Meloni ambassador finally spoke. Her translucent skin flickered pale blue with memory. Because of people like Daniel Reeve, she said 3,000 light years away, Daniel Reeve was pulling a burning ship out of a gas giant's atmosphere. He was 52 years old. His hair had gone gray 10 years ago. His hands were scarred from 100 extractions. His ship, the Second Chance, groaned and shook as toxic winds tore at its hull. Any sensible pilot would have turned back an hour ago. Daniel was not sensible. He was human. "Hold on," he said into his radio. "I can see your ship. 20 more seconds." The Perlani traders trapped in the dying vessel did not believe him. Their species had excellent vision, and they could see nothing but orange clouds and lightning. Their ship was falling. Their engines were dead. They had already said goodbye to each other. Then a shape emerged from the storm. It was small and battered and utterly impossible. A human rescue vessel, diving straight into hell to reach 3 strangers. Daniel matched their speed. He extended the docking clamps. The connection was rough, but it held. He began pulling them up, fighting against gravity and wind, and every law of physics that said this should not work, that it took 40 minutes to escape the atmosphere. When they finally reached clear space, the Perlani captain opened the airlock between their ships. He found a tired human sitting on a cargo crate, drinking water from a plastic bottle. "You came for us," the captain said. His voice shook. "We sent out a distress signal, but nobody responded. We thought we would die." Daniel looked up. His eyes were kind but heavy, the eyes of someone who had seen too much death. "Nobody dies waiting for me," he said. This was his famous phrase. He had said 1,000 times over 30 years. Rescue crews across 12 star systems repeated it like a prayer. It was not a boast. It was a promise. The Perlani captain would later tell everyone about the human who descended into a gas giant to save 3 traders. The story spread across shipping lanes and trading posts. It joined hundreds of other stories about Daniel Reeve. They called him the Retriever. He had pulled miners from collapsing asteroids. He had found lost colony ships drifting in dead space. He had carried survivors out of burning stations while his own suit melted around him. His body was a map of scars, and each scar had a name attached to it. The name of someone who lived because Daniel refused to quit. That he never talked about his work. He never gave interviews. When reporters asked about his motivation, he simply said that someone had to do it. His crew understood him better. Saritha, his Meloni medical officer, had worked beside him for 15 years. She had watched him go without sleep for 3 days during a colony evacuation. She had seen him give his food to survivors while he went hungry. She had held his hand when he wept for the ones he could not save. "You carry them all," she once told him. "Every person you rescued, every person you lost, you carry them all inside you." Daniel had nodded. "That is the job." Now, returning from the gas giant rescue, Daniel guided his ship toward the nearest station for repairs. Saritha sat beside him, her skin glowing soft green with contentment. Another successful mission. Another 3 lives saved. The emergency beacon hit them like a scream. Daniel straightened in his chair. The signal came from Waystation Horizon, a massive trading hub where 7 shipping lanes crossed. Thousands of beings lived and worked there. The beacon was automated, broadcasting a simple repeating message: reactor cascade. Multiple hull breaches. Estimated casualties climbing. Then the signal cut out. Daniel waited. His hands gripped the controls. Beside him, Saritha's skin turned pale white with fear. The signal returned. This time it included numbers. A death count that updated every few seconds. 100. 200, 300. "Set course for Horizon," Daniel said quietly. Saritha did not argue. She never argued. She simply began preparing the medical bay for what was coming. Daniel watched the death count rise. His jaw tightened. His eyes grew hard. Way Station Horizon was 4 hours away. A lot of people could die in 4 hours. But a lot of people could also survive if someone reached them in time. Nobody dies waiting for me. The second chance turned toward Horizon and accelerated into the darkness. 17 species called Way Station Horizon home. The station floated at the crossing point of 7 major shipping routes. It was old and sprawling, built over 2 centuries by dozens of different contractors. Some sections were sleek and modern. Others were held together by patches and prayers. Over 12,000 beings lived there on any given day. When the reactor cascade began, nobody understood what was happening at first. A Bravani engineer named Solteth was the first to notice. He saw the power readings spike on his console. He tried to shut down the secondary systems. He was 3 seconds too late. The explosion tore through the reactor deck and kept going. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the station, but the damage spread faster than the safety systems could respond. Within minutes, 17 decks were compromised. Atmosphere leaked into space. Fires burned in sealed compartments. Structural supports twisted and broke, and people began to die. Commissioner Aldrich received the casualty reports in his office on the administrative level. He was Bravani, like Solteth. His species were compact beings with stone-like skin. They valued logic and mathematics above all else. Emotion was a weakness they had evolved past, but as Aldrich watched the numbers climb, he felt something he had not felt in decades. Fear point: 400 dead. 500. 600. Rescue services from nearby systems responded immediately. Ships converged on Horizon. Teams attempted to enter the damaged sections. But the station was too unstable, too dangerous. The math was clear. Aldrich ran the calculations himself. 3 times. The results were the same each time. Any rescue attempt would cost more lives than it saved. The radiation levels were lethal. The structural integrity was failing. Rescue teams would die, and the people they were trying to save would die anyway. Aldrich made the logical decision. He ordered all rescue operations to cease. "We will focus on evacuating the undamaged sections," he announced. "The trapped survivors cannot be reached safely. We must accept this loss." 4,000 beings were still alive in those trapped sections. Aldrich knew this. He also knew that trying to save them would only increase the death toll. That it was logical. Across the galaxy, Daniel Reeve watched the announcement on his ship's display. He said nothing. He simply walked to the cargo bay and began loading rescue equipment. Saritha found him there an hour later. He was packing emergency oxygen tanks, medical supplies, and cutting tools. His movements were calm and methodical. He did not look up when she entered. "They canceled the rescue," she said. "I heard. The radiation will kill you." "Maybe." Saritha's skin flickered through several colors. Fear, sadness, and finally, acceptance. She had known Daniel for 15 years. She knew that nothing she said would stop him. "I will prepare the medical bay," she said. Daniel paused. He looked at her with those tired, kind eyes. "Thank you." Across human space, other rescue operators received the same unofficial signal. Daniel was going in. Anyone who wanted to join him should start flying now. Within hours, 11 human ships were converging on Horizon. Daniel's daughter called him when he was 2 hours out. Kira Reeve was 28 years old. She had her father's stubborn jaw and her mother's sharp eyes. She was a rescue pilot herself, trained by Daniel since childhood. She was also furious. "You cannot do this," she said. Her image flickered on the communication screen. "The station is falling apart. The radiation levels are 3 times the lethal threshold. You will die. People are trapped in there," Daniel said. "And you cannot save them all. I can save some." Kira's voice cracked. "Dad, please." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "When you were 7, our house caught fire. Do you remember?" "Yes. I carried you out, and then I went back in." "Do you remember why?" Kira closed her eyes. "The neighbors. Their baby was still inside." "That is who I am," Daniel said. "That is who we are. Humans do not leave people behind. We cannot. It is not in our nature." Kira wiped her eyes. She was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, Her voice was steady. "I will meet you there." The call ended. Daniel smiled sadly. He had hoped she would stay away. He had known she would not. The second chance dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the horizon debris field. Pieces of the station floated in the darkness. Some were small. Some were the size of buildings. Daniel activated his scanner. The results made his stomach turn. Over 4,000 life signs, scattered across dozens of sealed compartments. Some were running out of air. Some were freezing. Some were cooking in overheated sections, and the station would collapse completely in 19 hours. Daniel took a deep breath. He guided his ship through the debris field toward the nearest airlock. "Nobody dies waiting for me," he whispered. The impossible rescue had begun. 7 children huddled in the darkness of a broken school module. They were Melanie. Young ones, barely old enough to change their skin colors on purpose. Their teacher had died when the ceiling collapsed. Now they sat in the dark, holding hands, waiting for the air to run out. The oldest was named Tella. She was 9 years old. She had taken charge because someone had to. She told the younger ones stories to keep them calm. She rationed the remaining water. She pretended she was not afraid. When the wall began to glow orange, Tella pushed the others behind her. She did not know what was coming, but she would face it first. The metal melted away. A figure stepped through the hole. It was covered in a heavy suit stained with smoke and radiation burns. It moved strangely, hunched and careful. Then it removed its helmet, and Tella saw a human face. Old and tired and scarred, but smiling. "Hello," Daniel said. "I am here to take you home." Tella stared at him. She had heard about humans. Everyone had heard about humans. They came from a death world where everything tried to kill them. They were supposed to be dangerous. This one looked like somebody's grandfather. "There are 7 of us," Tella said. The passage behind us collapsed. "We cannot get out." Daniel nodded. He looked at the gap he had cut. It was barely wide enough for an adult human. Far too small for a Melanie adult. But children might fit. "I will carry you," he said. "One at a time. It will be safe. I promise." He reached out his hand. Tella looked at it. Then she looked at the 6 smaller children behind her. They were crying. They were scared. They needed someone to make a decision. Tella took the human's hand. Daniel carried her through corridors that groaned and shifted. He moved carefully, testing each step before putting his weight down. The radiation alarm on his suit beeped constantly. He ignored it. When they reached his ship, he set Tella down gently. Saritha was waiting with blankets and warm drinks. The Melanie doctor's skin glowed bright gold with relief. 6 more, Daniel said. Same location. He turned and went back into the dying station. IT took him 2 hours to bring out all 7 children. Each trip was harder than the last. The corridors shifted. New fires started. The radiation got worse. By the end, Daniel could barely stand. But 7 children were alive. 7 children would go home. Elsewhere in the station, a Bravani engineer named Solteth watched through a cracked viewport. He had accepted death hours ago. His compartment was sealed. The air was running low. The rescue had been canceled. There was nothing to do but wait. Then he saw the human. Daniel moved through a corridor that should have been impossible to navigate. Fire burned on one side. A hull breach sucked atmosphere into space on the other. The human walked between them like it was nothing that he was carrying an injured Prolani on his back. The alien was twice his size. Daniel should not have been able to lift him. But humans, Solteth remembered, came from a high-gravity world. They were stronger than they looked. Daniel reached an emergency airlock. He put the Prolani inside. Then he turned around and went back into fired. Solteth's people did not understand tears. They had evolved past such things. But as he watched the human disappear into the flames, moisture gathered on his stone-like face. "Why?" he whispered to no one. "Why would anyone do this?" Throughout the station, Daniel worked his system. Children first, then the critically injured, then those with the shortest survival windows. He did not ask species or status. He did not check for wealth or importance. Life was life. Other human ships arrived. Kira led a team through the Easter modules. She moved faster than her father, more aggressive. But she had learned from him. She knew the methodology. Save who you can, then save who you can next. Commissioner Aldrich watched the rescue feeds from his evacuation shuttle. His calculations had been clear. This should not be working. The humans should be dying. The survivors should be beyond reach. But the numbers told a different story. 100 rescued. 200. 300. The count kept climbing. Aldrich had not accounted for something. Human stubbornness. Human refusal to accept impossible odds. Human willingness to walk in a fire for strangers. His mathematics had been perfect. His understanding of humans had been completely wrong. Daniel was cutting through a collapsed bulkhead when it happened. The ceiling groaned. Metal screamed. And then everything came down. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying on his back. A steel beam pinned his legs. 30 aliens stared at him from the darkness of their sealed compartment. His radio crackled. Kira's voice came through, frantic. "Dad? Dad, your beacon moved. What happened?" Daniel looked at the beam on his legs. He looked at his oxygen gauge. For hours of air remaining, he looked at the 30 survivors who were now trapped with him. "Small problem," he said. "I will figure it out." He reached for his cutting torch. Daniel freed himself from the beam in 20 minutes. His legs were bruised, but not broken. He could still move. That was enough. The 30 survivors watched him work. They came from 6 different species. A Telluri grandmother, a young Perlani merchant, a Bruvani scientist with gray dust on her stone skin, and others. All trapped, all afraid. Daniel assessed the situation with the calm focus of a man who had done this 1,000 times. The compartment was stable for now. Air supply was holding. But the only exit was blocked by 2 tons of collapsed metal. His cutting torch was designed for ship repairs. Small jobs. Quick fixes. Cutting through that much debris would take 6 hours. His oxygen tank showed 4 hours remaining. Daniel began cutting. "You should rest," the Telluri grandmother said. Her name was Morith. She had been traveling to visit her grandchildren. "You are injured." "I am fine," Daniel said. He did not stop working. The young Perlani merchant moved closer. He was nervous, his scales shifting colors rapidly. "Will help come? Will someone find us?" "My daughter knows where I am," Daniel said. "She is coming. But I am not going to wait for her." He cut through the first layer of debris. 5 more to go. The Bruvani scientist sat in the corner, watching him. Her name was Drenith. She had been quiet since the collapse. "You are human," she said finally. "Yes. I have studied your species. Your planet is classified as a death world. High gravity, extreme temperatures, predators everywhere. Your ancestors should have died out millions of years ago." Daniel smiled slightly. "We are stubborn." "That is not what I mean." Drenith leaned forward. "I have read your history. Your wars. Your disasters. Every time your species should have been destroyed, you survived. Why? What makes you different?" Daniel paused his cutting. He looked at the 30 beings trapped with him. Scared, exhausted, running out of hope. "We take care of each other," he said simply. "That is all. When everything goes wrong, we take care of each other." He returned to cutting. The hours passed slowly. Daniel worked without rest. Sweat dripped down his face. His arms ached. The radiation warnings on his suit grew more urgent. He ignored them all. The survivors talked to pass the time. Morith told Daniel about her grandchildren. 5 of them. The oldest was starting school. She had promised to be there for his first day. The Perlani merchant confessed that he was smuggling medicine, not for profit, for a colony that could not afford proper medical supplies. "They will call me a criminal," he said. "But those people needed help." Daniel nodded. "Then you did the right thing." Drenith finally shared her story. She was traveling to apologize to a colleague she had wronged 20 years ago. "I destroyed her research out of jealousy. I have regretted it every day since. I thought I would die before I could tell her." "You will tell her," Daniel said. "I promise." His oxygen alarm began to beep. 2 hours remaining. He was only halfway through the debris. Daniel did not hesitate. He removed his mask and handed it to Morith. "What are you doing?" she gasped. "You need this more than I do. Meloni lungs are sensitive. Mine are not. You will die." Daniel smiled. It was a tired smile, a peaceful smile. "I have trained for low oxygen environments. I will be fine." This was a lie. He had no such training. He simply refused to stop. He returned to cutting. The air in the compartment grew thin. His vision blurred. His hands trembled, but the torch kept moving, cut by cut, layer by layer. On the other side of the debris, Kira had been cutting for 3 hours. She had seen her father's beacon stop moving. She had called for backup. She had refused to leave. Now she worked with desperate speed, burning through metal that seemed endless. "Hold on," she whispered. "Hold on, Dad. I am coming." Her torch broke through the final layer. At the same moment Daniel collapsed, he fell to the floor, unconscious. His oxygen gauge read 0. His lips were blue. He was not breathing. The survivors rushed to help. Morith pressed the oxygen mask back over his face. The Perlani merchant began chest compressions. Drenith shouted medical instructions she had learned from research papers. Kira burst through the opening. She saw her father lying on the ground. She saw 30 aliens fighting to save his life. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no." She pushed through the crowd. She took over the chest compressions. She was crying. She was cursing. She was begging. Daniel gasped. His eyes opened. He looked up at his daughter's face. "Did I get them all?" he whispered. Kira laughed through her tears. "You stupid, stubborn man. Yes, you got them all." The survivors carried Daniel to safety while Kira walked beside them, holding her father's hand. 30 more lives saved. The count continued to climb. Daniel woke up in the medical bay of his own ship. Suritha stood over him, her skin flickering angry red. "You stopped breathing for 2 minutes. Your lungs are damaged. Your radiation exposure is critical. You should be dead." "But I am not," Daniel said. "You try to sit up." Suritha pushed him back down. "You're not going anywhere. The rescue is over for you." "How many are still trapped?" Suritha hesitated. Her skin shifted to pale gray. "Sadness." "How many?" Daniel repeated. "Over 800. They are in the deepest sections. The station has 6 hours before complete collapse. Every other rescue service has withdrawn." She paused. "Only the human ships remain." Daniel swung his legs off the bed. His body screamed in protest. He ignored it. "Then I'm not done." Suritha grabbed his arm. "Daniel, listen to me. I have watched you risk your life for 15 years. I have never tried to stop you. But this is different. If you go back in there, you will die." Daniel looked at her. His old friend. His family in every way that mattered. 800 people, he said quietly. 800 lives. Children. Parents. People with families waiting for them. He put his hand over hers. "I cannot leave them." Suritha's skin cycled through a dozen colors. Fear, anger, love, acceptance. "Then I am coming with you," she said. They found 11 other human rescuers waiting at the airlock. Kira stood at the front. Her face was hard with determination. "The eastern sections are the worst," she said. "Heavy radiation. Structural failure imminent. I have mapped the fastest routes to the survivor groups." Daniel nodded. "Then let us move." The team entered the dying station for the last time. The conditions were worse than anything Daniel had ever seen. Corridors glowed with radiation. Metal groaned and twisted. Fires burned without oxygen, fed by chemical reactions that should have been impossible. But the humans kept moving. They split into pairs. Each team had a route. Each route had survivors waiting at the end. Time was the enemy now. Every minute brought the station closer to complete collapse. Daniel and Suritha reached their first group. 12 Bravani workers trapped in a storage bay. The door was sealed by pressure difference. Opening it would decompress the entire section. Daniel found another way in. He always found another way. He cut through the floor below the storage bay. He climbed up through the hole. He led the workers out one by one, while Suritha guided them to safety point 12 saved. 788 to go. Across the station, the other teams worked with the same desperate speed. Kira pulled a family of Perlani from a collapsed medical ward. A young human named Reese carried an injured Meloni elder on his back for half a kilometer. Another team performed emergency surgery in a burning room, removing debris from a survivor's chest before moving her. The galactic news networks had picked up the story. Billions of beings watched the rescue feeds. They saw humans walking into fire. They saw humans carrying survivors twice their size. They saw humans refuse to quit even as the station crumbled around them. Commissioner Aldrich watched from his evacuation shuttle. His stone face was unreadable, but his hands trembled. "I was wrong," he said to his aide. "My calculations did not account for this. I did not account for beings who simply refused to accept death." He opened a communication channel to the human ships. "This is Commissioner Aldrich. I am authorizing emergency resource allocation. Whatever you need. Supplies, equipment, medical support. It is yours." Daniel's voice crackled back through the static. "Thank you, Commissioner. But what we need is time, and that is running out." The station had 3 hours left. 400 survivors remained. Daniel pushed deeper. His radiation suit was failing. His legs could barely hold him up, but he kept moving, room by room, life by life, that he found the last survivor in the deepest section of the station, but a Prolani child, barely 5 years old. She was injured and unconscious, pinned under a fallen beam. Her parents had died trying to protect her. Daniel looked at his scanner. The section would tear away from the station in 3 minutes. The extraction route had collapsed. There was no way out. He found another way down a maintenance shaft, barely wide enough to crawl through, filled with toxic gas and sharp metal. It would take 4 minutes to navigate. Daniel had 3. He freed the child. He held her against his chest. He began to crawl. The shaft shook around him. Metal cut his arms and legs. The toxic gas burned his lungs. He could hear the station dying, screaming as it tore itself apart. 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Daniel burst out of the shaft into the main corridor. He ran. His legs failed. He crawled. He kept the child pressed against him, protecting her with his body. The section tore away. Daniel felt the floor shake. He threw himself through the emergency airlock. The door sealed behind him. He had made it. 3 months passed. The Galactic Council's homeworld was beautiful. Crystal spires rose into a purple sky. Gardens floated on anti-gravity platforms. Rivers flowed upward through the city, defying physics through ancient technology. Daniel Reeve stood in the council chamber wearing formal clothes that did not fit right. He had refused to let anyone adjust them. He had refused most things about this ceremony. But his daughter had insisted, and Daniel had never been able to say no to Kira. Over 40 species filled the chamber. Ambassadors, diplomats, ordinary citizens who had traveled across the galaxy to witness this moment. The crowd was silent as the High Chancellor approached the podium. "Today," the Chancellor began, "we honor a human who has changed our understanding of what is possible." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. He did not like attention. He never had. When Waystation Horizon fell, every calculation said rescue was impossible. Our greatest minds declare that the trapped survivors could not be reached. Logic demanded that we accept their deaths. The Chancellor paused. Daniel Reeve did not accept logic. A holographic display activated. Images appeared. Daniel pulling children from burning corridors. Daniel carrying survivors through radiation zones. Daniel crawling through a maintenance shaft with a child pressed against his chest. Seconds before the section collapsed, the crowd watched in silence. 4,127 survivors, the Chancellor said. Every single being who was still alive when Daniel Reeve arrived at Horizon. He saved them all. Not one life was lost after the human rescue began. The numbers hung in the air. 4,127. For this act of extraordinary courage and compassion, the Galactic Council awards Daniel Reeve our highest honor. The Eternal Flame. A small crystal was brought forward. Inside it, a tiny flame burned. It would burn forever, powered by technology older than most civilizations. Daniel Reeve is the 37th being in galactic history to receive this honor. He is the first human. The crowd erupted in applause. The sound was deafening. Daniel stood frozen, unsure what to do. Kira nudged him forward. "They want you to speak, Dad." Daniel approached the podium slowly. He looked out at the crowd. Thousands of faces, dozens of species, all watching him. He thought about the speech he had prepared. It was formal, groupé, the kind of thing people expected at events like this. He threw it away. "I am not a hero," he said quietly. The microphone carried his voice across the chamber. "I'm just a man who could not stand by while people died." The crowd grew silent again. When I was young, my house caught fire. My neighbors saved my family. They ran into the flames without thinking. One of them died. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. I have carried that man's face with me for 50 years. I became a rescuer because of him. He looked down at the crystal flame in his hands. Humans do not rescue others because we are strong. We rescue others because we know what it feels like to be weak, to be scared, to be alone and waiting for help that might never come. He raised his eyes to the crowd. We rescue others because someone once rescued us. The chamber was completely silent. I accept this honor, Daniel continued, not for myself, but for every being who has ever run toward danger instead of away from it. For every person who has reached out a hand to a stranger. For everyone who has refused to accept that some lives are not worth saving. He stepped back from the podium. Thank you. The applause that followed was different than before. Quieter, more respectful. The sound of beings who had heard something true. After the ceremony, Daniel found Suritha and Kira waiting by his ship. The second chance sat on the landing pad, battered and scarred but ready to fly. The council offered you a new ship, Kira said. State-of-the-art. Best technology in the galaxy. I like this one, Daniel said that Suritha's skin glowed warm gold with amusement. Of course you do. A communication alert beeped from his ship. Daniel checked the message. His expression changed. What is it? Kira asked. Colony transport. Engine failure near a black hole's gravity well. 300 passengers. Daniel looked at his daughter. 12 hours before they fall past the event horizon. Kira smiled. It was the same tired, determined smile her father always wore. Then we should get moving. They boarded the ship together. Daniel took the pilot's seat. Suritha prepared the medical bay. Kira ran system checks. Nobody dies waiting for me, Daniel said softly. The second chance lifted off and disappeared into the stars on a distant world. A young Bravani child watched the rescue broadcast with her parents. She had seen the ceremony. She had heard Daniel's speech. Now she watched his ship fly toward another impossible mission. I want to be like him, she told her parents. They looked at each other. Then they began researching rescue academies. The legend of Daniel Reeve continued. And across the galaxy, others began to follow.